So from this point in the course, we'll be working a lot more with actually coding, programming, and working in the code editor. So there's a couple of changes I want to make. The first is that in terms of the video recording that you're seeing, I've cut out everything apart from Android Studio now. No more taskbar at the bottom, as it just wastes screen space for now. We'll be working mostly in Android Studio. The second thing is, as we'll be working with this code here, it's probably going to be a little bit small depending on what device you've got. So I'm going to increase the font size, and I'll just show you how I'm doing this in case you want to adjust it yourself. So File, Settings, and then in here you've probably started on the default option, but if you go down to Editor, open that up, and Font, you can change the size. I'm going to make it a rather oversized 18, which should hopefully look quite good for your videos when you're following along. Okay, so there we go. So we can see that a bit better. And the second change I'm going to make, we're still in that split view from the previous tutorial where we have the code and the design editor. As you can see, we have the screen, and then we have like a blueprint of a screen. If you remember, I talked about layouts effectively being blueprints. For now, we're not really going to get any value out of the blueprint view. So this little blue icon here, which has some options about what we see in the design editor, select design surface, we can click that and you can see we've got three options: design, blueprint, design and blueprint. We can change that to design, then it becomes a lot bigger. And then personally, I'm going to just move this over a little bit until it starts to shrink. Okay, so this is a good view for, certainly for me, in terms of delivering the tutorial now. A larger font size, more width, more space as it's taken up more space, and then a small design only design view. Okay. So, understanding the syntax of XML. So the first thing I'm going to do is just close the split view down into just the code view, as we're talking about the XML code now. So this is our XML file. And right at the top, this confusing looking thing here, this is something we can more or less ignore for the rest of the course. It's the XML declaration. It just tells Android Studio what version of XML we're using and what type of characters to expect. When you make a new layout file, Android Studio will put this in for you by default automatically. And even if it didn't exist, even if we deleted it, Android Studio wouldn't complain because it would actually default to that anyway. So from this point forwards in the course, we can more or less ignore the XML declaration, which leaves the rest of the XML document. So the rest of our XML document is simply made up of elements and their attributes, and that is it. So an element in this case is the things you see in yellow, like text view and constraint layout, and the attributes are the things you see in purple and white, the things after the element is declared, is written. So there's your attributes for your text view. Now, very quickly going over the syntax of how you declare an element, you have a left arrow, less than sign, and the name of the element, then a space or a line break, and then the attributes, and then you have the right arrow. Now there's two ways to do elements with like this with these tags. I'm going to show you. If you look at the constraint layout, we have arrow, constraint layout, the attributes, and then the right arrow, just like that. And that's your opening tag. That's where the start of the element is. And then at the very bottom we have arrow, a forward slash, and then we have the constraint layout again, and the right arrow. So there's the opening tag, and then with the forward slash, the closing tag. And this is for when your element has things that can go inside it. So our constraint layout can have a text view inside it, and it does. So this layout has some contents. A text view, however, this one here, once you've written your text, there's not going to be anything else going inside this text view. So they could have done opening tag and closing tag like that. Do you see that? Text view. And then text view again with a forward slash, but there's no need. So if you don't need an opening and closing tag because there's no contents, then you can do what's called a self-closing tag. And the self-closing tag looks exactly the same as an opening tag, but just before the very end of it, the right arrow, there's a forward slash. And that's now valid. That's a opening and closing tag all at one. So let's together do a couple of examples of that with some pretend elements. So do the left arrow to start your tag, and let's call this my pretend opening and closing element. And do the right arrow, and Android Studio helpfully automatically gives you your closing tag. See that? Opening tag, closing tag, only difference is the slash. So this element, we can put something inside it, some contents of it. So now let's do our other type of tag. This can be my pretend self-closing element. And this time, rather than doing the right arrow, we'll copy the text view and we'll do the forward slash. Let's see what happens. And Android auto completes that for us. So that's the first bit of syntax to know. Your XML are made up of elements. Elements are declared inside tags. There's a left arrow and the name of your element, and they can either be done with a starting tag and a closing tag, or they can actually be self-closing if they don't have any contents. Okay, we'll leave those there. Now let's do some attributes. We'll do some pretend attributes. So let's, in our pretend opening and closing elements, let's do a couple of line breaks. You can have as many line breaks as you want, as long as it's inside the arrows, doesn't really matter. And we'll copy what's above. So we'll do Android, we'll do an Android attribute. So type the word Android, then a colon. And then again, we'll make up a pretend attribute. Let's do my underscore pretend underscore attribute. And attributes are usually some attribute, something, then an equal sign, then speech marks, and what the attribute is. So we'll do exactly that. We have Android colon, my pretend attribute, call it what you want, equals speech marks or inverted commas, and then my attribute value. And that is all there is to the syntax of XML. Okay? Elements declared in tags, which can be opening or self-closing, and then the elements have some attributes. And that's it. So with the theory out of the way, let's go ahead now, make a brand new layout file from scratch and start to add some real elements, some real Android items to our layout.